Hello, Horror Stories. My name is Bill, and I can finally share with you this story, which I should clarify is not mine, but my father's, who was a truck driver before he retired a few years ago. I remember one afternoon when he came home clearly distraught. We had not seen him for several days, as his travels were extensive and he often crossed the entire country, which kept him away for weeks at a time. That afternoon, when he arrived, my sister and I ran to hug him, but my mother noticed immediately that something was not right. She asked him how he'd been doing and what was causing him so much concern, and that's when he told us what had happened. His face was pale, and he could barely speak. You could tell he was having a hard time telling us what had happened, as he didn't know where to begin. I had never seen him like this in so many years. He began by saying that the outbound trip had gone normally. He arrived to deliver the goods on time and was able to rest well. However, on the return trip, something happened to him that he still could not understand, and for which he would never find answers. My father was coming down Route 94, heading for our home in Utah, and it was only a few hours away. The road was quiet, with little traffic. He said it was barely dark when he noticed a truck appear behind him out of nowhere. Since he had a double trailer, he had to go at a very slow speed, and the weather conditions didn't help either. It was very foggy and everything was extremely dark. Through the rearview mirror, he could see that the truck behind him had only one trailer, so he signaled for him to overtake so he wouldn't have to go so slowly. However, the truck behind him started honking his horn insistently, which prompted my father to pull over as far as he could so he could pass it. My father said that the driver of the truck behind him could pass him without any problems, since that stretch was a one-way stretch and there was no traffic at the time. It was just the two of them on the road. He didn't understand why he didn't pass him. They were like that for several minutes until suddenly the truck accelerated at full speed and began to merge with him. My father didn't know what he was doing or what his intention was, and as he tried to see the driver, he realized that he couldn't make him out, as the glass of the other truck was completely dark. This made him even more uneasy. He tried to look at the driver again, but the darkness of the glass was impenetrable. There was no way to see who was behind the wheel. Suddenly, the truck began to approach dangerously close, almost skimming the sides. My father, in a desperate attempt to avoid a collision, honked his horn and flashed his high beams, but the other truck didn't pull away. Instead, it seemed to push him toward the edge of the road. My father felt his heart pounding as he tried to maintain control of his vehicle. Just when it looked like he was going to be pushed off the road, he regained control of the truck and managed to get back into his lane. But the other truck was still matching him, and my father was on the edge of his nerves. All he could do was slow down, honk his horn, and try to stay in his lane. Every time my father slowed down, the other driver seemed to do the same. My father's nerves were increasing, yelling at him to stop, knowing that there were sharp curves on that road, which posed a real danger of everything ending in disaster. As they approached the curve, my father began to progressively brake and honk his horn without stopping, even though the truck maintained the same speed. When they reached the curve, the truck shot out into the void. The shock was such that my father almost lost control of the steering wheel, but he managed to stop and call emergency to ask for help and try to assist the driver of the other truck. My father quickly pulled over, grabbed the flashlight he always carried in his glove compartment, and ran out of the truck to investigate where the other truck had fallen. Although the place didn't look very deep, he illuminated every nook and cranny with his flashlight, expecting to find a desolate scene, with scattered scrap metal in the truck either on fire or wrecked. However, to his surprise, he found no trace of the truck. As my father recounted his experience, we were all gathered around the table, incredulous at what he was hearing. My sister's and my mother's gazes crossed each other's eyes, reflecting the surprise and bewilderment we felt. We were completely stunned, while he insisted that despite the darkness and fog, he had inspected the area meticulously. The flashlight revealed nothing but an empty lot, with no traces of an accident. There was no trace of the truck, not even debris. The scene was disconcerting, and the total absence of evidence intensified my father's concern. He was able to verify the situation because the site was not very deep, and with the help of a powerful flashlight, could be clearly seen at close range. puzzled as to whether he should call 911 or just leave. He decided there was nothing to report, so he ran back to his truck and immediately left the scene. As he traveled down the road, my father spent a few minutes reflecting on what had happened and decided to call one of his closest colleagues to tell him the story. On the phone, he told him everything he had experienced. His colleague, almost incredulous, mentioned that he had heard this same story from other colleagues. He told him that, in the 1990s, there had been an accident at the same curve. A truck competing in a race with another truck lost control, went off the road and fell into the void, with the driver losing his life instantly. It is said that the spirit of the deceased driver appears a few meters before that curve, inciting other drivers to compete in races, to then vanish into nothingness and fall into the void. His colleague explained that he used to doubt the existence of paranormal phenomena, but he was certain that the accident had really happened. Now, hearing that my father had experienced something so similar to what he had heard, his impression was so great that he was in shock. My father hung up the call, still stunned by the conversation. He kept his eyes fixed on the road, trying to process what he had experienced. For the rest of the drive home, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that accompanied him. The story of the truck racing around the deadly curve and the spirit challenging other drivers was echoing in his mind. That night, my father was unable to sleep. He spent the hours staring out the window, waiting for the dawn to bring some clarity to his thoughts. The next day, even though he was a few hours away from the strange incident, he decided to return to the daytime site. He wanted to better understand what had happened, and perhaps find some clue or answer. As he reached the bend, the landscape was still just as bleak and desolate, but now he felt a strange connection to the place. Despite his initial skepticism, he couldn't help but feel that there was something more to that stretch of road. As he surveyed the area, a police vehicle drove by. They noticed my father and stopped to ask him if he needed help. My father told him what had happened, and the officers, not very surprised, offered their support by commenting that it was not the first time they had heard that story about that curve, but that they had never found concrete evidence of paranormal activity and that everything always remained a dark mystery. Sometimes tragedies happen on the roads with souls that can't rest, and I don't even suppose they know that they no longer belong to this world. Years passed, but my father's experience left an indelible mark on our memory. Although the incident could never be fully explained, the story of the missing truck and the spirit-defying drivers became a warning to all of us about the fragility of life and the mysteries that can lurk in the most unexpected places. If you have enjoyed this story, we invite you to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any others. Until next time.